Good evening, doctors. Hope you all are doing good and are safe. I am Dr. Devang Sarvaya from the Medical Affairs teams of SIMS CIPLA Oncology. This September, on Blood Cancer Awareness Month, we would like to welcome you all for Meet the Expert on Caring for Lymphoma, an initiative by CIPLA. It gives me immense pleasure, and we are fortunate to have today with us our eminent speaker, Dr. Chirag Shah, who is Director, Department of Hemato-Oncology at Apollo CBC Cancer Care Hospital, Ahmedabad. He is going to enlighten us on the topic of lymphoma diagnosis and treatment. So without much ado, I would like to invite Dr. Chirag Shah to share his screen and help us with the presentation, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Namaste all. Let me start my screen. Right. So we are going to talk about lymphoma today. Among the blood cancer, this is one of the most exciting cancer to treat, in the sense that the way it has grown in terms of the science, it is one of the first cancers to have this combination chemotherapy, which led to these excellent outcomes. So Hodgkin's lymphoma was actually the first one which led to a the MOP combination was the first one that led to excellent survivals, and that created a lot of enthusiasm among the oncology community and public at large that cancer can be cured. So let us first discuss some cases that would help us understand the today's diagnostic techniques and their needs, and what can be achieved with treatment. So this is first one is an architect student, age 21. He had a painless cervical node for 2 months, about 4 to 5 centimeter in size. And this patient had biopsy which proved his lymphoma to be a certain specific type. And in spite of what most of you would know, that chemotherapy is the standard treatment for lymphoma, this patient was treated with radiotherapy only, and it has been 5 years since then. In fact, for this type of lymphoma, we can even keep the patient under observation, and the 10-year plus survival is 91%. I'm not purposefully not mentioning the type of lymphoma, but I will give you that information later. So this one lymphoma did not require any chemotherapy. Then there was a 62-year-old gentleman with painless lymph nodes in the neck and axilla for about 3 months, with other workup being normal, and his PET CT scan showed diffuse lymphadenopathy. So obviously, the family, patient, everybody is quite concerned. The biopsy confirmed this to be a lymphoma, and we advised him observation and no treatment. The lymph nodes, the largest lymph node was about 3 centimeter, and he had lymph nodes in the neck, axilla, mediastinum, and intra-abdominal. And yet he was advised only observation. He is he works for or rather runs his own security company, and he was quite confused when we diagnosed the cancer and say that now you don't need treatment, that observation is okay. He obviously took a few other opinions because he could not believe that, and finally agreed to this idea of only observation. For last 3 years, he remains asymptomatic and every 3 months observation. So this was a different type of lymphoma. And now we have a 76-year-old man, father of a senior physician, who had axillary node for just 10 days, about 6 centimeter in size. He had biopsy done within this such a short history, and he started with R-CHOP chemoimmunotherapy combination, that is rituximab and CHOP. And he tolerated his first cycle very well. Just few days ago, I think couple of days ago, we gave him his second cycle. So now all three are lymphoma, and yet we waited in one patient. For one, we gave chemoimmunotherapy. For an elderly gentleman, we gave chemotherapy. And for the comparatively younger one, we are only observing, and the first one, we did only radiotherapy. So we will see why that difference is there, and the importance of teasing out the type of lymphoma so that these types of decisions can be made properly and that patients don't have under treatment or over treatment. So I think all of you know that majority of the lymphomas present with lymph node enlargement, and most of the time they are painless. If rapidly growing, there may be some discomfort, but painful lymph nodes are very uncommon to have severe pain. Systemic symptoms like fever, fatigue, and night sweats can happen, although they are not in everybody. Same way, weight loss, not in everybody. And based on the organ involvement, there may be symptoms. Say, for example, if intra-abdominal nodes, then there may be GI symptoms, abdominal pain or nausea, vomiting, like that. If the nodes are in the lungs, mediastinum, then there may be cough if they are bulky nodes pressing. Or in the genitourinary system. So depending on where the lymph nodes are. Also, the lymphomas can have what we say extranodal involvement. That means they may be actually involving lung, stomach, intestine, bladder, etc., specific organs, and accordingly there may be symptoms. So the most common, however, is painless enlargement of lymph nodes. And this is frequently confused with TB in India. When I started my practice about 20 years ago, I frequently saw patients who received empiric anti-tuberculosis treatment. And when they did not improve, then they had biopsy. That trend is much less now. However, I still see patients who get FNAC, fine needle aspiration biopsy, a cytology, and which is then reported as reactive or possibly TB, and then patients are treated with anti-tuberculous treatment, and then when they don't improve, they come to us. So, when do we recommend more workup? So every lymphadenopathy does not need biopsy. The lot of the URI, upper respiratory infection patients, can have lymph nodes in the neck, and they obviously don't need biopsy right away. What we say is that if there are no obvious etiology, patient is not running fever, not having any constitutional symptoms, and the history has gone on for a few weeks or more, or if it is growing very rapidly. If it is not growing, if they are small, 2-3 centimeter, 4 centimeter, then we can wait for a few weeks. A lot of the self-limiting infections or other etiologies would recover in 2-3 weeks time, maximum 4 weeks time. In that case, you can wait. So, as we earlier mentioned, that the FNAC is not a test for lymphoma, and it is certainly, one should not depend on that for either ruling in lymphoma or ruling out lymphoma. For many of the neck nodes in India, especially in Gujarat, FNAC is sufficient because of the head and neck cancer. So for carcinomas, it is okay. But if that comes normal, then you cannot say that because it is normal, this is not a lymphoma. So you definitely then need to pursue it with more workup, and that would include true cut biopsy in most of the cases. Earlier, we recommended excisional node biopsy in most cases because of not having the same type of pathology expertise, as well as the non-availability of a lot of experts who would do a good true cut biopsy. But nowadays, true cut biopsy is mostly sufficient. Multiple good cores are taken by a lot of experts, including general surgeons, interventional radiologists. The beauty of the interventional radiology training is that even for deep-seated nodes, intra-abdominal, within the chest, etc., they can do good quality biopsy in most cases, and we don't need to do an invasive procedure for this. This is done as an outpatient, no stitch is required, and patient goes home in 30 minutes or so. Sonography guided or CT guided biopsy can be done from deep-seated nodes. The reason we require multiple cores or good tissue nowadays is because of the subtyping by IHC. The immunohistochemistry is extremely important because there are over 70 subtypes of lymphoma. So that's a huge list, and that keeps growing. So earlier we used to say whether it is just a low grade or high grade lymphoma, and we didn't have much else different to do in terms of treatment. But now we know a lot more about the treatment as well as the prognosis based on the subtyping. That is why this is extremely important, and no longer anybody should treat lymphoma without immunohistochemistry. A lot of lymphomas look very similar under microscope, and by IHC they may turn out to be very different. Even in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma can be confused with Hodgkin's lymphoma and vice versa without IHC in many cases. And among the lymphomas also, a lot of variation. Even a reactive node can look like lymphoma. And say, for example, if somebody has a bad tonsillitis, and if you do a biopsy of the node that is seen in the cervical level 2, for example, because of the tonsillitis, that would look like a very aggressive lymphoma. And only IHC would be able to differentiate this from infection to versus a lymphoma. So that is why a good tissue is very, very important. A word about the staging of lymphoma. So stage 1 is limited to one area of the lymph node, such as the neck or axilla or hilum, just one area. The stage 2 is two different areas as shown in this picture here, this one and these two areas. Stage 3 means it is on both sides of the diaphragm. you have above the diaphragm and below the diaphragm. And stage 4 is either involving other organs such as liver or bone marrow, as seen in this picture. This is suggesting bone marrow involvement in the pelvic region. And A and B is based on B symptoms, that is fever, night sweats, or weight loss. So what do we do for staging? Depending on the type of lymphoma, we may do minimum workup such as sonography or go up to CT scan or a PET CT scan. In many cases, we need bone marrow biopsy, but not in all cases. Important tests for us in planning and prognostication are LDH, uric acid, HIV, and hepatitis B. For certain treatments, such as rituximab, hepatitis B can flare up, so it is important to know about hepatitis. HIV is associated with certain lymphomas, that is why it is important. If the LDH is very high or uric acid is high, then we are worried about tumor lysis syndrome. That is why we need to know about those tests also. So as we discussed, there are over 70 subtypes of lymphoma. The biggest two subtypes are whether it is Hodgkin or non-Hodgkin. And among them, there are multiple subtypes. So within non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which there is low grade, intermediate grade, and high grade. The other way to differentiate non-Hodgkin's lymphomas is whether it is a B or a T cell. Now, unlike the solid tumor, say for example, if somebody has a lung cancer and it is stage 4, then it is incurable. Or a stomach cancer, stage 4, incurable. But for a lymphoma, even in stage 4, cure rate is very high. So, for example, a stage 4 Hodgkin lymphoma, about 70% of cases it can be cured. Or say diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, about 50% of these cases can be cured. So for lymphoma, more prognostically important parameter is something known as IPI, International Prognostic Index. This index looks at 5 parameters: age, performance status, which is fitness of the patient, LDH, and extranodal sites, and stage. Now, so these are the parameters that tell us what are the chances of this patient getting cured or getting well. Similarly, in the PET scan, after a few cycles, if we do a repeat PET scan, that can tell us a lot about what are the chances of patient getting cured. Say, for example, in Hodgkin lymphoma, if patient has a PET scan which goes to a Newville score 1 or 2, after 2 cycles of chemotherapy, he or she has 80 to 90% chance of getting cured. Versus somebody who does not get to that level, it is about half the cure rate. So these are very important prognostic tests also. So like we are saying that for the diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, the most common subtype, if somebody has a low IPI score, that means out of the 5 of those factors that we saw, if he has only 0 or 1, then the 5-year chance means getting cured is 73%. On the other hand, if it is 4 to 5, means he has majority of the factors are abnormal in that, then it is only 25%. So that's a huge difference with just IPI. From low to high, the prognosis changes from 73 to 26%. Coming to the treatment part, there are chemotherapy, radiotherapy in few cases, only rituximab, which is an anti-CD20 monoclonal antibody, and in some cases only antibiotics. That's a big surprise, right? Only antibiotics. So the stage 1 stomach lymphoma of marginal zone type can be treated in cases with only antibiotics because these are related to H. pylori, and there is a subset of patients who will be cured with just that. So lymphoma is an extremely heterogeneous group, and again very important to subtype properly and stage properly. Now very quickly we go over the main lymphoma subtypes. So Hodgkin lymphoma with 12 doses of ABVD or 6 cycles of ABVD has been standard for many years, and 90% survival in stage 1 and 2, cure rate 90%. Even in stage 3 and 4 it is 70%. So this has been achieved for many years, but over the long-term follow-up, because a lot of these are young adults or pediatric patients, we realize that there are some long-term side effects. Hence, a lot of trials were done to see in what patients we can reduce the number of chemotherapy, or we can reduce the drugs so that there is less long-term side effects. And that is where PET scan has made a huge change. With a PET scan, if after 4 doses of ABVD, if the Dewey score, that means the response is so good that from a score of 1 to 5, if it has come down to 1 or 2, then we can stop chemotherapy there and give a very low dose of radiotherapy to this area. This applies to stage 1 and 2. Applied, say for example, if the nodes were only in the neck, then we can do this 4 doses of chemotherapy, a very low dose of radiotherapy, and that's the end of the treatment. If it was a higher stage, then in such good PET responders, we can remove bleomycin, which is known to cause lung toxicity, and in the short term as well as in the long term. In more advanced cases which have failed the first line treatment, the newer treatments like brentuximab, an anti-CD30 monoclonal antibody, has made a big difference. Immunotherapy, that is nivolumab, pembrolizumab, are now approved and have wonderful results in people who have failed chemotherapy, multiple lines of chemotherapy, and still in a number of patients we get very good results with these drugs. And then autologous transplant is the treatment of choice in those who have relapsed after chemotherapy, and in very occasional cases allogeneic transplant. Now, coming to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, where for many years, CHOP was the only standard chemotherapy. And since the long-term survival was about 40 to 50%, there were a lot of efforts to improve upon this in terms of by adding more chemotherapy or making the chemotherapy doses much higher. And when I was in fellowship, these were the different things which were being used a few years prior to that. And they, in significantly higher doses and many more chemotherapy agents combined. And yet, a very large multi-center trial, clinical trial showed that the results with any of these regimens was equal. That means no difference could be made by making more aggressive chemotherapy. So what earlier we thought is that hitting harder and harder and harder will give more cure rate. But then we realized that hitting harder was not the answer, but hitting smarter was the answer. So with the better understanding of the biology of the disease, we understood that many of the lymphomas, if you remember, we discussed that the non-Hodgkin's lymphoma can be divided into B cell and T cell. So the B cell lymphomas have CD20 antigen expressed on their cells. Rituximab was a monoclonal antibody targeted onto this CD20 antigen. So this addition first time improved the survival to a great extent, and it was a real major success story which translated the biology to clinical application, the knowledge, as we say, bench to bedside. And first such trial, which was published in 2010, showed us that the CHOP versus addition of rituximab, the improvement in median survival was from 3.5 years to 8.4 years. So this was a huge increment. So since then, rituximab has become standard of care in the addition in the non-Hodgkin's lymphoma of B cell type. That is another reason why immunohistochemistry is very important, because the only way to know whether a lymphoma is B cell type or T cell type is possible with immunohistochemistry. There is absolutely no other way, clinically, radiologically, or by looking at microscope. One cannot differentiate between the B and T cell type. Now, in the non-Hodgkin's, there are three grades of lymphoma. Low grade is where you can have only observation, which is our second patient, the 62-year-old gentleman, where he had multiple lymphadenopathy, and we still chose to put him on observation because these people can have an indolent disease, grow very slowly or not grow. In fact, they can even have ups and downs in the lymph node size for many years. We have patients under observation for 5 years, 7 years with no treatment given at all. Some people in this category can be treated with rituximab alone, such as the follicular lymphoma, many marginal zone lymphomas, etc., where only rituximab, so no chemotherapy required. This agent would cause no lowering of blood counts, no hair loss, no nausea, vomiting, etc. So for elderly, frail, this is an excellent choice in specific cases. There are non-chemotherapy regimens such as rituximab and lenalidomide combination. Then we have bendamustine and rituximab, which does not cause any hair loss, which is a very important concern for many patients, especially women. And this is a much better tolerated regimen also. So BR, bendamustine rituximab, has become a very important and standard of care in many low-grade lymphomas. Then intermediate grade, the diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, whereas we've just heard that rituximab addition for CD20 positive disease is mandatory, and there is significantly improved survival with addition of this agent. When I started practice, this drug was costing about 1 lakh plus per dose. And now it is come down remarkably due to many generic options available. So earlier we were not able to give it to everybody, but now almost everybody should be able to get it. And now with many government schemes and all, I think there is hardly any reason for nobody, to go without rituximab when they have CD20 positive disease. CAR T cell therapy is the almost, you can say, science fiction used for lymphomas which have relapsed after multiple chemotherapy options, where patients' own cells, T cells, are taken from the blood and genetically engineered over 2 to 3 weeks and infused back into the patient, and they work as immunotherapy, you can say, to fight the cancer. As of now, that treatment is not available in India, and it is about 4 to 5 crore cost available in US, Europe, and few other countries. So it's very expensive right now. Double hit, there are some other different lymphoma types where we have some variations that we need to do. So among the diffuse large B-cell lymphoma also, there are certain subtypes where we would change some treatment. Then high-grade lymphoma, everybody may have heard of Burkitt lymphoma, which used to have very poor survival because it grew very fast and patient very quickly died, before many years. But now after CHOP, rituximab, and then most recently dose-adjusted R-EPOCH has improved the survival substantially. Lymphoblastic lymphoma is another high-grade lymphoma which is to be treated like an acute leukemia. So overall survival has now improved a lot, months to decades, and overall about 60% cure in diffuse large B-cell lymphoma. So one important point to remember is that for any lymphoma at diagnosis, you should make sure that the patients are well hydrated, and if their uric acid or LDH is high, then they are given allopurinol or febuxostat, and until the clarity is there about the plan of treatment or how much there is a risk of tumor lysis syndrome, their diet should not include fruit juice, fruit, or coconut water. Because when the cells are dividing fast, they would result in high potassium in the blood, and that can be suddenly fatal. That is why in the first 1 or 2 weeks of treating aggressive lymphoma, we ask patients not to take this kind of diet. The other important is neutropenic fever. If any of your patients who are on chemotherapy with an oncologist or hematologist and they come to you and they are having fever, then unless otherwise proven, think of this as a medical emergency, and they should get antibiotic injectable right away, generally 3rd or 4th generation cephalosporin at least, because patients with hematological malignancies can have severe neutropenia with chemotherapy. And at that point, if their fever is not treated timely, they can die of sepsis in a matter of hours to days. So this is a very important thing to remember. So in summary, there are more than 70 types of lymphomas, and hence personalized therapy is very important. And for that, accurate typing and staging is important. I forgot to mention the first young patient, the 21-year-old architecture student. He had Hodgkin's lymphoma, but a very uncommon subtype, which is a nodular lymphocyte predominant type. So for this type, the chemotherapy has less role, and if it is a localized, then only observation or the treatment with a low dose of radiation is sufficient. The 76-year-old gentleman, the physician's father that I mentioned, had diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, and hence he had to be started on chemotherapy right away. We discussed the tumor lysis prevention. Very important to understand, not all patients need treatment right away. Not all patients need chemotherapy, and age is not a contraindication. So we have treated more than 80-year-old patients also. 85, even 90-year-olds can be treated with certain treatments. There are some oral treatments also for lymphomas. So not everything is injectable. It depends on the subtype. And that stage 3 or 4, unlike solid tumors like lung, breast, colon, etc., can still be cured in a case of lymphoma. Thank you.
Sir, thank you so much for that lovely talk and taking us through details of lymphoma, staging, biopsy, what all tests should be done, and what all treatment things can be done for the lymphoma patients. Sir, we have got many questions from the audience, and I'll just take one each at a time. Firstly, sir, can you share some more details on lymph node swelling with respect to lymphoma? Any specific site which is most common you see on primary screening? And along with that, anything specific blood count suggests towards blood cancers?
Okay, so what is the commonest lymph node site for lymphoma, right? That's the question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So the commonest sites, I would say, are the neck nodes. That is probably number 1. And then axillary and inguinal.
Okay.
The inguinal nodes are the ones which are most likely to be non-specific, because we get a lot of small, even unnoticed injuries in the feet,
Right, sir.
which leads to lymph node swelling in the inguinal region. So whenever we have to biopsy a node, if patient has multiple nodes, we avoid inguinal node as far as possible, because in normal inguinal node biopsy may confuse the patient and the treating doctor, and they may feel that everything is normal. So avoid that node as far as possible.
Yeah. And sir, the other question was, along with that, anything specific blood count that suggests towards blood cancer?
So blood tests in general are not very diagnostic of lymphoma. CLL, chronic lymphocytic leukemia, is sort of categorized under low-grade lymphoma for our classification purpose. So you can say that in that case, blood test is diagnostic and there would be lymphocytosis. Follicular lymphoma and some other low-grade lymphoma, mantle cell, can have circulating blood cells and it will show up as lymphocytosis. But in general, blood tests are not very specific, and in most cases, in fact, blood tests are normal, and patient may feel that we have done all the blood tests and they are normal, so I cannot have a cancer.
Okay. Sir, which patient is an ideal candidate for chemo or radiation or observation?
So that depends on the subtype. So since there are more than 70 subtypes and stage. So for example, I discussed the first case.
Yes, yes,
that, that patient is an ideal candidate. Now of the same size, but different subtype, like a diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, we would give chemotherapy. Some of the advances are that in diffuse large B-cell lymphoma in early stage, we can reduce the chemotherapy number by combining it with chemotherapy. So few cycles of chemotherapy and low dose of radiotherapy, same way as we spoke about in the Hodgkin's lymphoma early stage.
Right, sir. Sir, and how does a physician can diagnose between a TB patient and a lymphoma patient?
So biopsy is the only sure way. There is absolutely no other way to know that. Among the biopsy, you can have the true cut biopsy, which is an outpatient, very easy, convenient for the patient, and cost effective.
Okay, sir. What all tests and diagnostic workup can be done by a primary physician?
So the primary physician can start when you suspect lymphoma. You can get CBC, liver function, creatinine, LDH, uric acid, HIV, HbSAg, hepatitis B,
Right, sir.
and sonography, at least a USG of abdomen and a chest X-ray. So this much, if you are suspecting a lymphoma, would give a very, very important information, because if all of these are okay, then you can be rest assured that you are not dealing with something very bad. Even if there is a lymphoma, it is not an emergency.
Right.
On the other side, if you find big lymph nodes, say 8-10 centimeter size lymph nodes in the sonography, then you know that this patient needs to be referred very quickly. Or if you find LDH, which is 800 or 1000, or uric acid is 9, 10, then you know that this patient needs a very quick referral, because these patients can get very sick quickly.
Right. Sir, there's one more question. Can you please highlight in detail about differential diagnosis of lymphoma?
So differential diagnosis of lymphoma is a very wide list, but most important are the infections. So among the infections, the tuberculosis is one, then lot of viral infections, for example, infectious mononucleosis. And that can look very much like lymphoma. But at the same time, as we discussed, that if you wait out, then you will know that it will slowly resolve over the few weeks. So that will tell us that you are not dealing with a lymphoma. Then many simple upper respiratory infections can also cause lymphadenopathy. Bacterial infections can cause lymphadenopathy in the draining region. So somebody has, say, some lesion in the arm, in the hand, which is infected, then there may be axillary lymphadenopathy. The HIV can cause generalized lymphadenopathy. The other category apart from infections is a collagen vascular disease. So lupus, for example, or rheumatoid arthritis can have lymphadenopathy. And of course, solid tumors can also metastasize. So say you have a patient with axillary lymphadenopathy or a supraclavicular lymphadenopathy, that can be breast cancer or GI cancers going to supraclavicular nodes, or lung cancer going to supraclavicular lymph nodes. So solid tumors can also have lymph nodes. But again, the true cut biopsy will differentiate all of these. Head and neck cancers can have neck nodes.
Thank you, sir. Sir, one more question. Sir, what are the different types of lymphoma patients you commonly see in your practice?
So the most common ones we see are diffuse large B-cell lymphoma. And even in the worldwide, I think DLBCL is the most common subtype, probably about 30-40% of lymphomas. The next common one is the follicular lymphoma, which is a low-grade lymphoma. marginal zone lymphoma. These are the next common ones. And of course, Hodgkin's lymphoma is probably about 20% of practice is Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Okay, sir. Sir, what are the key takeaways and points to remember for the physician from your side?
So again, I would say that accurate diagnosis is very important. FNAC, fine needle aspiration, is not sufficient. In majority of cases, there is no hurry to do a biopsy when you see a patient with lymphadenopathy, if they have, especially if they are having, minor symptoms, constitutional symptoms, you think seasonal fever or something going on. The empiric AKT should no longer be given in patients with lymphadenopathy. Accurate diagnosis is nowadays very easy and must be done. Immunohistochemistry must be done to do the proper subtyping of lymphoma, because as you have seen, the treatment can vary from only observation, no treatment at all, to aggressive chemotherapy. So to differentiate between the three is very important. And then stage 4 lymphoma even can be cured. So when it comes to lymphoma, stage 4 is not bad, is not something where you give up and tell your patient that, oh, this is a very bad diagnosis, and don't spend your resources, don't waste time on this.
Right, sir. Sir, last question, sir. Your final message on Blood Cancer Awareness Month and the initiative.
Yes. So the Blood Cancer Awareness Month, I mean, we have spoken about lymphoma, but I would like to emphasize that we have come an extremely long way in last 3-4 decades in the results of blood cancers, be it acute leukemia like AML or ALL, or be it chronic leukemia like chronic myeloid leukemia or chronic lymphoid leukemia, and lymphomas of many different types. And from the cure rate of about 10%, now in many cases it is 50, 90% like that. So that is, I think, the very, very big message that must go on. And that has come about with the understanding of the disease, the biology, understanding of the chemotherapy and other medicines, and the personalization of treatment now has allowed us to differentiate those who need treatment and those who don't need treatment right away, and those who can be spared chemotherapy and be treated without any chemotherapy. And that large majority of these patients are treated completely as outpatient. 95% of lymphomas are treated as outpatient. They are never admitted to the hospital. So please spread this message that nowadays lymphomas and blood cancers in general have excellent outcomes, and that the before at least the first try, nobody should give up on these patients. And cost should not be a hindrance now. Government schemes of many types are there, many generic compounds. So the cost has also come down heavily. There are many trust hospitals, civil hospital, many options to treat these patients.
Sir, thank you so much for your time, and we really appreciate the way you have taken us through the cases, the interactive nature of the talk, different pointers that you mentioned about what should be taken care, precautions for the physicians and diagnostics. So we really look forward for a long-term collaboration and engagement with you in for such future initiatives. And once again, big thanks to all the participants. Stay safe and take care. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.